everyone and welcome to RC Fun and Games. I am Ryan and today I'm gonna start my Injora IR60 build. The only part I am gonna use that's not from Injora is the chassis, and I decided to go with the Oppai Factory LCG chassis for the IR60 that he designed. And it's got loads of cool features, but we will be talking about those features once I've got it assembled so I can point them out and show the advantages over this LCG chassis to the Injora ones. Now, besides the chassis, we are going to be going for the Fat Viper motor. That means we got the 370 transmission to go with it. And I went for a brass mount plate, which we are going to have to modify to be able to sit in this chassis. But we'll get onto that in a minute. And the servo I'm going to be using is the 11 kilogram cordless servo from Injora. I have been using these now on all my builds and they have not let me down at all. Plenty of power, speed, and excellent durability. So far, none of them have packed up. Even after running them in water, they have been excellent. So to go with the servo, I've got the servo horn. And the shocks I went for are the 59mm shocks with the brass ends. So far, these have been really awesome shocks, and I like that extra weight down low. So this is what I'm going to use on this build. Of course, I've got a set of high clearance links, and the ones I've gone for are the ones for the Bronco or Defender and the ones in stainless steel with the plastic ends. So of course I can set the angle on my drive shafts. And to make sure the drivetrain is bulletproof, of course, I went with the hardened drive shafts from Injora. So far these have been holding out really good, so I definitely recommend a set of these. And the tires I went for are the X-Pin tires. These are the 60 by 20mm tires. I have tried every other tire they've got. So for now, I'm going to try a set of these on this build. And of course, if I don't like them or the look of them, I can always upgrade in the future. And the rims I went for are the new 6-spoke brass rims from Injora. These are offset and deep dish, and I got to say they look really awesome, and I'm looking forward to giving these a try. And of course, I've got a brushless ESC for the Fat Viper motor, and the axles I went for are the black diamond axles from Injora. So far, I've been really impressed with these axles throughout all the builds I've used them on, and besides them performing really well, they look awesome. And of course, the last item on the list is the IR60 body, which I took in black. This was just before the purple got launched, and I would like to have taken the purple, but I had no idea it was going to be launched when I placed my order. So let's get started, and for that, we might as well assemble the LCG chassis from Oppai Factory. I also wanted to say a massive thank you to Oppai Factory and the admin of the Traxxas Trx4m group on Facebook, because it wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. I won this on a photo contest on the group, and I'm really looking forward to testing out this awesome LCG chassis from Oppai Factory. I have heard and seen so much of his awesome products, so this is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. So let me stop talking and let's get this LCG chassis out of the packet and assembled, and of course then I'll show you exactly what you need to do to adapt your mount plate to this chassis. And I just wanted to mention, look how nicely packaged this comes. Looks like something you'd buy off a shelf. I've got to give it to him. The attention to detail is awesome, and I'm really looking forward to testing out this chassis. So let's get this open. Let's get everything out. Okay, so in this package we get the chassis rails, we get the center mount, which this is what's been modified. If you pay attention, you've got 2 holes here. That means it sets up a lot higher on the chassis, leaving nothing at the bottom to get hung up. So that's definitely awesome. And of course, we are going to have to do a couple of holes on this one so we can adapt it to the chassis. So we'll be doing that in a minute. You also get the battery tray. This is the tray that goes in the rear. And of course, it is to hold a spare wheel. So you get these adapters depending on what height you want your spare wheel running. You got 3 different adapters. Besides that, you get different mounts depending on the motor that you're going to be running. So that's another awesome feature about this kit. You also get these awesome side pieces to the chassis, which have the Oppai Factory logo on them, and I think that's an awesome little touch. Of course, he also provides some bumpers. I'm guessing this is for a better catch system and more clearance. And of course, it comes with all the hardware needed to do the assembly of this chassis. You also get the rubber bands included. These are to use as limiting straps, just so your suspension doesn't unload on steep climbs. So another awesome feature that this chassis comes with. And the one thing that really impresses me is the awesome detailed instructions that he provides with his kit. So let's get this thing assembled. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab my brass mount plate, So I'm just going to use the chassis rail as a template. Like that I know exactly where my 2 holes go, so I can get them drilled and tapped. So let's start with that. Just find your central point in the middle and then just take a drill bit and mark out where your holes go. As you can see, there's my 2 marks, so let's get those drilled out and tapped. Okay, so we've got the holes drilled. Now let's tap them. Now I'm going to be using an M1.6 by 35 to start the thread. Now very gently and very straight. Now I'm gonna move on to the M1.8 thread maker and gonna clear those threads a bit more. So as you can see, that's how easy it is to drill and tap your holes. It wasn't difficult. Let me get the other side done and I'll be right back. I've drilled and tapped the other 2 holes, and don't forget it's a 1.5mm drill bit, and then I used an M1.6 by 35 to start the thread, and I finished it with an M1.8 by 35. And as we can see, I just want to test these 2 holes on this side. They are perfect. They thread in really nicely. So just be patient, don't be aggressive, and just let the weight of the drill do the threads. And of course, when you're going backwards, make sure you are lifting the drill up to not destroy the threads. Okay, so let's start by mounting this. And to do that, I'm going to grab my trusty magnetic bowl. I'm going to pour all the hardware into there. Okay, so now that I've got all my hardware organized, you've got the M2x4, M2x6, M2.5, and of course you've got some spacers and other things provided. I'm going to grab 2 of these to start the assembly. Okay, so let's grab our chassis rail and our mount. Let's put that in there. We are then going to grab an M2x6 screw and we are just going to throw that into here. Okay, so as you can see, it was really easy to drill, tap, and get the chassis rails mounted up. And look at the difference. There's absolutely nothing hanging out the bottom to get caught up. So definitely an awesome chassis to go with if you want a little bit more clearance on your rig. So now we're going to move on and fit the plate that separates the front of the chassis. And you get 2 different ones provided. Depending on the motor you're going to be running is going to determine which one you're going to be running. So I'm going to be running a 370 transmission with the Fat Viper motor, so I'm going to go for this one over here. So it's going to be sitting something like that. Now we're going to grab the M2x6 again, and we're going to screw those in on the sides over here. Now we've got the front mounted up, let's move on to the back. And in the back, I'm going to be fitting the plate that can run the spare wheel. So if I'm not mistaken, this goes in as well over here. And you'll have the lower holes that match up with this plate. And once again, we're going to be using the M2x6 for this. Okay, so now that I've got to this stage, I have just realized there's no way I'm going to be able to access the screw heads to be able to put my lower links in. So I'm going to have to strip this back apart. So before I do that, let's quickly get the links assembled, and then we can remove the base plate, put our links in, put the base plate back, and then we can fit the motor and transmission. So I'm going to start with the front uppers, and I'm going to do what I've always done. I'm going to throw a spacer and then the end. And on the other side, you're also going to throw a spacer, so you're going to have 2 spacers on each one on either side. And the reason I do this is so that I can angle the axle, so we can get a much better angle on our drive shafts. And once we've got those on, all we've got to do is pop our ball joints in. Okay, and that's one upper done. So let's find the other one and repeat the same process. I would really like to see Injora come up with some brass ends for these links. That would make them really, really cool. So let's hope in the future they will make some nice metal ones to finish these off really nicely. Once again, I'm going to grab the uppers on the rear, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to throw a spacer on either end. So now we've got all the uppers done, and like I mentioned, I used a washer on either side. And for all the angled ones, you're not going to use any spacers, so just get all the ends on and get your ball joints in. And now for the lower front ones, you've got these angled ends, and those are the ones you're going to use on the short side of the bend. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of the angled lowers, and that's going to go in on the bottom side over here. And for this, we are going to be using the M2.5 by 12. Okay, and this is what it should look like once you're done. You've got your lowers with the bend facing the point. Now this can go back into the chassis. Okay, so now that we've got all the links on, we can move on. Okay, so yeah, we've got our transmission and our motor. Let's get the transmission open first. And once again, I just want to point out how cool the design is and the finish off of these products from Injora. I think they've really been killing it, especially all the new products launched in the last year and a half have been really, really awesome. So let's get this transmission open and we can get the motor fitted, and of course make sure that the system has got grease in there. And as we can see, they've got grease in there, but there's definitely not enough to my liking. So let's get them out. And let's grab our motor. Now, as you can see in the hardware packet, you get your little pinion gear provided, and of course this awesome Fat Viper motor. I've had it sitting around the house for about 2 weeks, and this thing does look really awesome. The purple and the finish off on this is really well done. Very nice motor. Now I'd really like to see how this performs, so let's get this pinion gear on and get this transmission assembled. And to fit this little grub screw, you are going to need a 0.9mm wrench. One is provided, but if you buy one of their little tool kits, it also has this 0.9mm wrench with it. Okay, and you will need to put a little bit of Loctite on this grub screw to make sure it doesn't come loose. And you will see on your motor pole you've got a flat side. Make sure the grub screw sits on that flat side. Inside the hardware packet you also get the screws for fitting the motor. And once again, I recommend a little bit of Loctite on these screws. You don't want these coming out inside the transmission. Now we do have a little bit of room to play with, so let's just see how our gears sit in there now. Okay, and I just want to point out that you can move the motor a bit, which I did. I loosened that screw, pulled it up a little bit so that there's absolutely no friction. It runs nice and smoothly, but yet there's also no play between the teeth. So let's get these gears out, greased up and thrown in there. I'm just going to be using some high temperature graphite grease from Castrol. That's what I've got lying around, and I always like how it sits on the teeth and keeps the system nice and quiet. Okay, so let's get our first gear back in there. I'm also just going to put a little bit of grease on this gear over here. I just want to throw this gear back in there as well before I grease it. I just want to make sure it's not catching on that pinion gear because it stands up really high. And look, it does. I'm very thorough with my stuff, and this is why I always check everything before I go any further. I've made sure that pinion gear is all the way down to the bottom of the shaft of the motor as far as it will allow it to go, and it is catching this upper gear no matter what I do. So I'm going to remove everything. I'm going to take that pinion gear and I'm going to grind the end of the teeth away to make sure it doesn't catch on this gear. Okay, so as you can see, I went outside to my Dremel and I just removed the edges of the teeth around the top to make sure it doesn't catch on the second gear inside the transmission. So now let's get it mounted back up. Okay, so now that I've got it assembled, let's just quickly throw this gear back in and check that it's not catching it anymore. Okay, and now I've got a nice free running motor. Much better than it just catching the edges of those teeth. So let's get this gear out, let's get it greased up so we can get this finally closed up and done. Okay, so now that we've got everything greased up and I know that my pinion gear is not going to grab that second gear, let's get it closed back up. Just by turning your motor, you can tell if it's nice and free, and turning the transmission nicely, and it seems to be moving perfectly well. So now I'm ready to throw my drive shafts on, and then we can throw the transmission into the chassis. I also recommend a little bit of Loctite on this one. I've put my wire downwards. Hopefully that will allow me to keep the wires not from sitting up on top like that. Now, all we need to do is throw this into there. Once again, we're going to grab the M2x6 screws, and that's what's going to hold the transmission down. Okay, so now I've got the transmission and motor fitted. We've got all the links fitted. I think it's time we grab our axles and shocks. Let's get them fitted. So like I mentioned, I went for the 59mm shocks with the brass ends, and I really like the way these work. I prefer the ones without the piggy because the piggy just gets in the way. So I don't see the point, especially if they're not functional. There's no point having them. So let's get these disassembled and filled with oil. Okay, so I'm going to start by removing the oil that is inside the shock. Okay, and the oil I'm going to be using on these shocks is the 650 CPS 51WT. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just putting one drop at a time, moving the shaft to work the air out of the system. If you want an in-detail video of how to do the shocks, up in this little corner right here, there will be a video link so that you can go and check out how to set up your shocks depending on how you want them. Don't be in a rush with this process. Make sure you've worked the oil nicely through from one side to the other until there's no air bubbles. You will also notice there's little micro bubbles. Make sure all those have escaped before you try and cap it. Okay, so now that all the bubbles are gone, I'm going to throw my cap on, and any excess oil should come out of the little hole on the lid. Always make sure to clean all the excess oil off, whilst dust is just going to stick to it. I just want to point out that I pushed in the shaft all the way when I put the cap on, so that when it extends, it will always pull back to halfway point at least, giving me a much lower ride height than if you cap it with the shaft fully out. And to do the ball joints, they're really easy. All you need to do is slip an O-ring on and push it down to the bottom. Of course, grab this, make sure your flat end of your ball joint sticks towards the name, put it through there and throw another O-ring on the other side. And as you can see, it's as easy as that to get your ball joint on. Now at the bottom it's exactly the same process, just throw an O-ring on, put it down to the bottom, put it through and put another O-ring to keep it in place. Okay, so it's as simple as that. Okay, so once you got your ball joints in, if you're going to run springs, just throw your springs back on now and make sure you put your little spring retainer back into place. Now, I'm still very indecisive if I'm going to run it with springs or without springs, but it's got a nice dampening motion like this. So for now, I'm just going to assemble all four with the springs. I'll be right back once I'm done. Okay, so I got all four assembled, and for now, I'm going to put the springs on. If I don't want to run springs, I'll take them off afterwards. But let's first get the truck built, and then of course I will see how I'm going to set up the suspension completely. To fit the shocks, I'm going to use the spacer Oppai Factory provided with the chassis kit, and I'm also going to use the 2.5mm by 12 screws that he provides. So let's just put that in there, throw our spacer, and then of course choose a location to put our shock. And I'm going to be using the second last hole. I can always mess with the suspension afterwards, but for now, let's just get this one screwed in here. And once again, don't forget, don't over tighten them, they're only going into plastic. And once again, I'm going to use the second last hole. We can always change it in the future. Okay, so now that we've got the shocks fitted to the chassis, it's time to grab our axles and let's get them disassembled and greased up before we throw the servo on and throw them on the truck. I went for the diamond axles from Injora. These are definitely my favorite axles so far from Injora. I do like their portal axles, but it makes the truck set up very high. So in my opinion, these are still my favorites if you're trying to build something that you want to sit nice and low and have a really low center of gravity. And of course, it provides all the links that you need and also the mount for your servo. All the hardware needed to do the installation, and of course, the awesome diamond axles from Injora. Check those out. I've got to say that the design of these are just really, really awesome. They hardly get hung up on anything compared to the other axles. And besides that, they have been really durable. I haven't had an issue with them yet. Now, one thing I do recommend before we go any further is let's open it up and let's throw a little bit more grease in there, because normally they're lacking a little bit on the grease. And as you can see, it's got plenty of grease in there actually. You don't really need to put any more grease. But since I've got it open, I might as well throw another lick of grease on it. And like I've mentioned before, I'm just going to throw some high temperature graphite grease from Castrol in here. It's what I've got lying around and it's always done me good on my little RC cars, so I just keep using it. So now I just throw this back in here. Okay, so now we've got those on. Let's get this packet open and get our links assembled. Let's start by throwing our mount on there. And the screws you're going to be using are the M2x8. Okay, so now let's grab our steering link and our ball joints. Let's get them assembled. And just like your shocks, just throw an O-ring on, pull it down to the bottom, just throw it in and put another O-ring on the other side. It doesn't make a difference which way you put your ball joints through on this one. You can put it however you want. Okay, so now you're going to grab the 2.5 M by 12. And that's what you're going to use for the link. Okay, so now I'm going to grab one of these arms. Two different ones are provided. It's entirely up to you which one you want to use. I normally use the long one, so I'm going to get this one assembled. So in my previous builds, I fitted it like this. Now in this build, I'm going to fit it like this. To me, it doesn't make absolutely no difference which way you put it. It just looks tidier this way. So I'm going to try and put it on this way this time. Now to fit this arm, I'm going to use an M2.5 by 10. They do not come inside this packet, but I had some that came with the shocks. So that's what I'm going to put on here because it gives me exactly the right depth I need. So that's our front axle completely mounted up. All what's missing now is to throw our servo on. So I might as well quickly grab our servo Let's get the box open and let's get the servo installed. Okay, and like I've mentioned, I've gone for the 11 kilogram coreless servo from Injora. So far, I've used them on all my builds. I think that's about 10 different builds now, and they have been excellent. Not one of them has died on me, so I continue using them because I think their price and output is just awesome. Okay, and the screws I'm going to use to tie down the servo are the M2.5 by 6. Now you don't have to put all 4 in. I found some extra screws that I have lying around to be able to put all 4 in. Okay, so now that I've got it to this stage, I'm not going to put the servo horn on because it's no point until you have centralized the servo, and that we can only do once we connect it to the electronics. Let's get this front axle assembled, and I'm going to start by throwing on the 2 upper links. That's the hardest ones to get on, so let's start with that. We're going to be using an M2.5 by 16 for this. And that's the trickiest screw to get in. Once you've got that one, everything else is actually quite easy. Okay, so now that we've got that there, we can throw our shocks on. Okay, and once again, we're going to be using the M2.5 by 16 for this. And just before I go any further, I'm going to get my drive shaft in. Don't forget, make sure it's in phase, so the lugs must match up with each other, or else it's going to give you an uneven ride. Okay, now that we've got the drive shaft on, let's put our shock into place. And like I've mentioned, it's the M2.5 by 16 that you use for these. The angle on the drive shaft isn't too bad because of the extra spaces up on top here, allowing for full droop on your suspension. And of course, it also fully compresses. That shows that the design of this chassis is spot on. It's really well made. Now, let's grab the rear axle. Let's get this one open, and let's quickly make sure it's got enough grease as well. Okay, so let's quickly get this axle open. First test is it smooth? Yes, it's nice and smooth, but sounds quite dry, this one. So let's quickly open it. A little bit of play on this one. The other one didn't have any play, so I didn't need to shim it, but this one definitely needs a shim in there. Okay, so let's just see how much grease is in here. And yes, this time there's more grease all over it than actually on the teeth. So we definitely want to throw a little bit of extra grease in there. Now, let's just grab the hard way here. Let's grab 1 or 2 of these shims. Let's take out this gear. And let's just throw 1 of the shims on the back here. Okay, now that's a lot better, and play-wise it is almost non-existent, so perfect. Now let's get our screws back in here. Hardly any noise coming from that, and it's very nice and smooth. So let's get the rear one assembled as well. And to do that, we are going to be using the M2.5 by 10. And for the lower links and the shock, you're going to be using the M2.5 by 16. Now, before I go any further, I'm quickly going to throw my drive shaft on, and once again, make sure it is in phase. Okay, so now that we've got our axles, servo and links all assembled, I just wanted to show, look how flat that belly is. Absolutely nothing over here to stick out and get caught on anything. Another thing is, look how nice it tucks away and stops before it hits anything on the chassis. So far I'm really impressed with this chassis from Oppai Factory. Definitely looking forward to getting out and testing this rig. Okay, so now we can move on to the next stage, which in my opinion is going to be the rims and tires. Let's get them assembled, and then of course we'll assemble the body and throw the electronics in. So let's start by getting these rims open. And once again, Injora has killed it with these rims. Look how cool those look. Of course, you get the hardware needed and these awesome rims. They really did an awesome job with these. That deep dish look looks so nice. And with the 6-spoke, which is one of my favorite design rims, I think this is going to look really cool on this truck. So let's get this thing apart and let's get the first one assembled. So as you can see, the design of these are very different. There's no screws on the outer back part to hold the bead together. It's just the center screws that holds everything together. So let's grab a tire. Okay, so let's check out this X-Pin tire from Injora. This is the smallest size they make. This is the 60 by 20. And in my opinion, it would have been nice if they were by 24 because they are a little bit narrow. Besides that, they look awesome. They feel really cool, very sticky tires. You push them together like that, you can tell immediately these things are super soft and super sticky. Now let's get the ring in and let's get one assembled on camera, and then I'll do the rest off camera. Okay, my ring is in there. I'm now going to drop the front of my rim in. Once again, just pull gently until the bead sits down nicely.
When I was just a boy, Christmas brought so much joy.
Make sure you do only a few turns on either side so it can go down symmetrically.
I couldn't sleep late at night, looking for Santa with lights. Those are the memories I still remember. Then I became a man, lost sight of who I am, but right in front of me was the answer.
These were really quick and easy to assemble, and I really do like that deep dish look with the brass. That looks really awesome. Now let's get the others assembled, and the quickest way I know how to do that is, as you can see, that was definitely the quickest way. Now all we got left to do is get them onto the truck. So let's get them installed. Let's get our pin in there. Not going to bore you guys fitting the other two, so yeah, we go. And there you are. That was definitely quicker. Now, all we got left to do is assemble the body and get the electronics in there. Okay, so now let's grab the body, let's get it assembled. This is something I've been looking forward to for weeks. I've had this sitting here for a while now, and I just kept on doing other things instead of moving on to this project, but I was really looking forward to seeing what this body is like. Okay. Stickers fall out immediately. The instructions we're gonna need. Now let's check this body out. Wow, that does look cool. Check that out. I thought this was gonna be just a sticker, but it's actually painted on. So that's very interesting. Let's get the rest of the components out. There's the bar work for the back. And in the last packet are the panels, light kit, and all the hardware we need. Okay, so I'm going to grab another magnetic tray. I'm going to empty all my screws into here so we can sort out the different sizes. Okay, now that I've got all my screws organized, let's get started. Okay, so let's grab this piece over here. We're going to grab our hinge piece and we are going to fit it in there like that. I do believe that is right, but if it isn't, we can always change it right at the end. Okay, so we grab the M1.4 by 8. Okay, so now that we've got this mounted, it looks right compared to the little picture, so let's put that one in the back. Okay, so now we're going to grab the roll bar piece and the two side panels, and we're going to screw those onto, and we are going to need the M 1.4 by 4. So I'm assuming the shortest screws we have. Okay, so now that we've got that together, let's grab this bar and we're going to continue using the 1.4 by 4. Now we're going to grab the piece that we had initially and we are going to be putting that in the back here. And we're going to be using again the M 1.4 by 4. Okay, so as you can see, you only put the one screw in over here to hold it. Now we're going to grab the next packet with all the panels. Let's get them out. The 1.4 by 10 is the longest ones that are provided, and I believe they go in the bottom over here. And now the rest of them should just be the shortest ones in the bowl. So the M 1.4 by 4. And the last one of the short ones go in here. Now let's repeat this again on this side. Okay, so now we're going to grab the cab and we're going to be putting the screws in on the window, and those are going to be once again the shortest screws in the bowl, which are the 1.4 by 4. Okay, and now we're going to grab the back and we're going to join it with the cab, and we are going to be fitting the 3 screws that are in the back over here, and once again those are going to be the M 1.4 by 4. Okay, we're going to grab again a 1.4 by 4, and that's going to go on these side ones right here. So now we're going to grab our front grille and we're also going to stick that into here. It's a bit of a tight fit to squeeze that in, but it does go in. And once again, we're just going to grab the 1.4 by 4, and that's going to go in on the front here. Okay, so now we're going to grab the clip, and that goes on the front over here. For this, we are going to be using the M 1.4 by 6. Now we're going to grab the accessories and get them in. well, they're hard to get in, but at least by being rubber, they're not going to be falling out anytime soon. Now we've got the wiper blades, let's get them on. Okay, so there you are. Those were really easy to fit compared to the mirrors. Okay, so we are now done. You have got a different grill option if you'd like to run this grill. I quite like the one that I've put in there, so for now I'll run that one. If I get bored of it, I will change it over to this grill over here. Just wanted to point out that there's a lot of leftover hardware from assembling this body, yet we have filled every single hole on the body, so I don't know what all those screws are for. Okay, before we throw the body onto the chassis, I just want to point out that you got two different bumpers from Oppai Factory. Clearly this one is to go with the other grill, and this one is to go with the grill that I chose. And of course I've got the original bumper that comes part of the IR-60 kit, but I don't think I'm going to be running that. I would rather run this one, it looks cooler. So let's get this fitted to the front, and to get this assembled I'm going to use an M2x6 for the front hole. And we're going to be using an M2x4 for the back hole. Okay, so now we can throw the body onto the chassis. And to fit the body in the back, I'm using the M2x6. Okay, so now we got the body on. Now let's just quickly test and see if it clips on. Okay, so the only thing left to do now is get our electronics in. So let's cut this open. Now let's just get this out. Okay, so let's get the electronics installed, and I'm going to start by plugging in the motor. Before I go any further, I'm going to throw these onto the chassis, which looks like it'll give me a great spot to fit my electronics to. And to fit these, I'm just going to be using the M2x4. Just going to grab the Velcro. Just going to use some double-sided tape. Okay, so I'm just going to stick a piece of double-sided tape. Let's put this one on, and maybe we use the other side to fit our receiver. Okay, so I'm having a lot of trouble for this battery to fit here, but I'll definitely order a smaller battery. But for testing purposes and because I want to run it on 3S, I'm going to leave it in the back there. It should work perfectly fine. So for now, let's just tidy up our cables and let's turn it on so we can centralize our servo. Okay, so let's turn on the controller. Let's hit the on button. Okay. Oh yes, that works perfect. Okay, well, before we do any more testing, let's get the servo horn on. Now, okay, we need to reverse the steering, so I'm just gonna go in here quickly. Yeah, now it's working the right way. Plenty of power. Now, because we've got the 11 kilogram servo, I am gonna change the dip switch. I'm gonna flip number 1 up. Okay, so as you can see, definitely more speed and power once you flip the switch number 1 up, keep number 2 down. That gives you 7.4 volt, if I'm not mistaken, to the servo, and you can notice it. Now, let's just check. Once I close this up, now the servo horn is catching on the inside of the clip. So that's a problem. So let's get that back off. Okay, so I got all the electronics fitted. I also got the servo connected, and I've got the headlights in. Now, one thing I did do off camera, I removed the body clip that clips on in the front because it was giving me loads of trouble. It was catching on the servo horn. So I decided it's easier to just get rid of it. And I've ended up putting a magnet up on top here and a magnet inside the body, which makes it a lot easier, if it wasn't for my big battery in the back here, for it to just close down and stay closed. And the overall stance of this rig with the Oppai Factory LCG chassis is just so cool. Look at the clearance we've got underneath there and how nice it sits. Overall, I am really impressed with the overall look of the truck, and I am looking forward to getting out on the backyard course to go and test this thing out. Just want to show you how nice and slow this thing can crawl with the Fat Viper motor, and as you can see, this thing has got an insanely slow, smooth crawl. Very impressed with the overall result, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing lots of testing and seeing how this thing performs. Now I'm gonna leave you all with some running footage on the backyard course, and until the next time, happy trails everyone!
up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. You got me like, oh yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling it wrong. Hey, it's too late to try to go contain it. A generation fueled by creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.